Hey everyone, what's going on? So yesterday, the big news was that we got the death of Queen Elizabeth II on September 8th, which is really interesting because in England, they would write the date as 8/9. In America, it's 9/8, but in England, where she is from, the date would be 8/9, a lot like the number 89. And if you've been following my channel for probably the past 7+ years, I have been talking about the patterns to Queen Elizabeth, and a lot of it had to do with this number 89. So it's very interesting that she would now die on the date 8/9. And a lot of it stemmed back to this video right here in 2015, where I noticed this pattern with Queen Elizabeth and how she was connected to the movie Field of Dreams. Wikipedia has since changed this, and maybe I'll explain that in a little while, but for years, I talking like 5 years on Wikipedia, it said that Field of Dreams came out on April 21st, 1989, which just so happened to be Queen Elizabeth's 63rd birthday. And that's interesting because in this language of gematria, if you write out Field of Dreams, it just so happens to equal 63. And when I discovered this in 2015, Queen Elizabeth just so happened to be in her 63rd year as being the queen, and she was also 89 years old. And think about how the movie came out in the year 89 on her birthday, and it was also her 63rd birthday. So I knew there was some type of pattern that existed. And funnier yet, now that I'm thinking about it here, I put this video out on July 18th, 2015, which is really funny because if you go from her birthday in 2015 to the day I put that video out, that means I put the video out a span of 89 days after her 89th birthday even. It's like, what are the odds of that, you know? And I know that this is connected even further to me because she just died on 9/8/2022. And if you go from the day that she died to my birthday this year, it just so happens to be 63 days, right? Like how Field of Dreams equals 63. And you know it's connected to baseball even further because if you write out Major League equals 63. Major League Baseball equals 63. So, pretty interesting. There's a whole bunch of other connections to Field of Dreams, but I just want to prove to you that I've been talking about this number 89 with Queen Elizabeth for a really long time. Even on May 31st here, 2022, I talked about Field of Dreams and Queen Elizabeth and my old narrative with the number 89 and how it's linked up to Queen Elizabeth. And you know, the reason I even brought this back up is because we had the death of Ray Liotta, and Ray Liotta just so happened to be Shoeless Joe Jackson in the movie Field of Dreams, and he died on May 26th this year, which was interesting because that same day the Cubs and the Reds had played in the baseball game. The Reds beat the Cubs 20-5. If you write out Shoeless Joe Jackson, it equals 205. Zach Hubbard even had a prediction that the Queen would die on May 20th, 20/5 in her country, right around that same time. So he dies just a few days after that. But the Cubs and the Reds ended up playing in the Field of Dreams game this year on August 11th. And the Reds just so happened to be the team that the Chicago White Sox played in the 1919 World Series that the movie Field of Dreams is based off of. The Black Sox scandal, right? So the Reds were linked up. And even today, or the day that Queen Elizabeth died, the Reds just so happened to play the Chicago Cubs again. And then the White Sox, of course, blew out the Oakland Athletics, which I'll get to because that's important to Field of Dreams. The Athletics were the team who won the World Series in 1989, the Earthquake World Series, and it was linked up to the movie Field of Dreams when he takes Terrence Mann to the baseball game where the Athletics are playing and they flash Moonlight Graham 1922. 1922 was the same City World Series. 1989 was the same City World Series, Oakland versus San Francisco. And Moonlight Graham, his first ever game was in 1905, the one game that he played in real history. If you look at the 1905 World Series, it was the Giants versus the Athletics, just like the 1989 World Series. So you know there's a humongous connection here. And in 2015, I was even talking about the Mets possibly being in the World Series. And the Mets ended up being in the World Series. The Mets play in Queens, New York. They played the Royals. They lost to the Kansas City Royals. And whatever, I'll come back to this. But It's all linked up here. But just notice, Field of Dreams, talk about Ray Liotta on May 31st. I even mentioned the date September 8th in here. See if I could find it because it linked up to Field of Dreams. We talked about how August 9th is 6 months and 3 days after 2/6, which is the day Queen Elizabeth became the queen. So that means August 9th, 89, was 6 months, 3 days after that. And the date September 8th, the day she ends up dying on, is 7 months and 2 days before that date. And once again, if you write out Field of Dreams just so happens to equal 63 and also 72. So it's absolutely linked up. And she just died 234 days after Kevin Costner's birthday too. 234. But once again, I'll explain all of that in a little bit here. Just really wanted to point out this, that I was pointing out all of these connections to the number 89, you know. Even talked about the Braves winning last year and how it was linked up to Queen Elizabeth II. And Atlanta Braves in gematria equals 89, right? Atlanta Braves equals 89. So, you know, this huge connection. Talked about how the White Sox, the team of Field of Dreams, played the Royals on 8/9/22, August 9th this year. Talked about how the Mets played the Cincinnati Reds, the other team connected to the Field of Dreams and the Black Sox scandal. They played them on 8/9/22 this year. But let's see here. I just want to show that back when Chris Rock slapped Will Smith, I also talked about the Queen and the number 89 and how that slap was on the death date anniversary of King James. Of course, King James, probably one of the most famous kings, you know, because of the Bible and so on, right? But his son was King Charles, and that he was the king during the English Civil War, and also his son, King Charles II. So now Queen Elizabeth dies, and we have King Charles III, most likely. And, you know, think about that in regards to the English Civil War and stuff. So it's interesting things going on here, but King James equals 89. I talked about the number 89 like crazy. And, you know, I also talked about how this was connected to the 89th episode of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, once again, connected to that royal narrative, and how in 2016, there was a football player named Will Smith that died on April 9th, which is the same day in history that Prince Philip died, and it was linked up to Prince Philip. So a lot of stuff going on here. 8/9. I even have a post from 2019 where I even said 89 important to Queen Elizabeth, right? Buckingham Palace 89. So this post was all about, you know, there was all that Virginia blackface stuff going on, and I pointed out how I was having synchronicity and how I thought Curtis Blow might possibly be important to the narrative. And then a few days later, the big media story was that one of the Virginia guys, officials or whatever, he admitted that he wore blackface like Curtis Blow. And then Curtis Blow was born on August 9th, 8/9, and Virginia equaled 89, and pointed out this connection to the Queen again with the number 89. So once again, just pointing out all this stuff. For years, I've been talking about the number 89 and how it connects to Queen Elizabeth. And then the point is, now she's dead on the date 8/9 in the country that she lives in. In 2015, there was also another big pattern that was pointing to the number 89 with the Queen, and it had to do with Kanye West singing the Freddie Mercury song Bohemian Rhapsody at Glastonbury. And the reason he did that was because the Foo Fighters singer Dave Grohl fell off the stage and broke his leg. So they replaced the Foo Fighters with Kanye West, which was pretty weird. But, you know, think about how the Foo Fighters recently lost their drummer, and they just did the tribute to him right before Queen Elizabeth dies. And he says that his favorite drummer was the drummer of Queen, whatever that guy's name is, Roger Taylor, I think. And Roger Taylor, his birthday just so happens to be July 26th. Let's see here. Roger Taylor. His birthday was July 26th, which is also the birthday of the new Prime Minister of England here, right? Liz Truss. And that was also the day that Joey Jordison, the guy from Slipknot, the drummer of Slipknot, had died. And there's a huge narrative here. I don't want to re-explain it. Maybe I'll leave some links in the description, but it all stems, like, because after Kanye West sang that Bohemian Rhapsody, he said he was the greatest living rock star alive, and then the singer from Slipknot called him out, and there was a little feud and whatever with Kanye West. So Slipknot is absolutely linked up to this, especially considering Slipknot's only member to die at the time was Paul Gray. And I was talking about how it was linked up to Freddie Gray. Remember the Freddie Gray death? And how that was linked up to the Civil War and the Gray Coats. And it was also synced to Freddy Krueger. And Freddy Krueger in the movie Drop Dead Fred was linked up to this. And this is the guy from Drop Dead Fred. Once again, the connection to England. And the same year that Drop Dead Fred came out was the same year that Freddy's Dead came out, and that was the same year that Freddie Mercury also died. So it was a bunch of predictive programming, it seems, that Freddie Mercury was going to die. But the moral of that story is the whole year I was following this big narrative with Kanye West, and I was talking about his VMAs with Taylor Swift when he got up on stage and said that Taylor Swift didn't deserve the award and Beyonce was the one who deserved the award. And on the very same day of the VMAs that year, Wes Craven, the guy known for the Freddy Krueger movies, ended up dying. And then Taylor Swift won a whole bunch of awards for her album called 1989. And the media the next day had a mainstream story where they called her the Queen of the VMAs. So once again, I knew there was something linked up to the 1989, or the number 89 and the Queen. And it was even more interesting because the guy who plays Freddy Krueger, his name is Robert Englund, right? Robert Englund. Once again, making me think that there was something important to the number 89 and Queen Elizabeth. And then when you look at the gematria, you see Taylor Swift is 168, just like how Beyonce Knowles is 168, like how Queen Elizabeth II is 168, like how Ray Liotta, the guy from Field of Dreams, how he just died 168 days before my birthday. Once again, making me think that this pattern was important to the number 89. But if you go back to last year, right around the time of the Field of Dreams game, it was just after the Field of Dreams game, that's when Kanye West dropped his album called Donda, and there was a whole bunch of stuff with hurricanes and a bunch of interesting things linked to Slipknot. And I'm just bringing this up because around that time I noticed I was having a bunch of synchronicities and things connected to dreams. And I knew there was something important to Field of Dreams with all this. And the Field of Dreams game was on August 12th last year, which was 8 months and 9 days before Queen Elizabeth's birthday. And notice how the score was 8-9, right? So the White Sox won 9-8, or also 8-9, this date that syncs up to the death of Queen Elizabeth, Field of Dreams. Notice the Yankees also even stayed on 63 wins, right? Connected to there. So, just what are the odds? This is the very first ever Field of Dreams game. The one in 2020 got canceled due to coronavirus, so then they rescheduled it to August 12th, 2021 with the Yankees and the White Sox, and the score ends up being 8-9, 8 months and 9 days before Queen Elizabeth's birthday, which is also supposedly the same day that the movie Field of Dreams came out. Also, if you write out Kevin Costner's full name, Kevin Michael Costner, it equals 89. And if you write out Chicago, Illinois, it equals 89. And there's a deeper connection here, too, if you followed me forever. August 11th, which is the day that the Field of Dreams game was played on this year, was a big day we were talking about in the Gematria Truth community. August 11th, 2019, because that was the day that Tisha Bob fell, and it was linked up to the red heifer and a bunch of stuff in the Third Temple. So we're really following this date. But I was talking about how Slipknot was going to play at the Iowa State Fair for the first time on August 10th that year, and how it was linked up to Zion and Israel and a bunch of stuff. And Slipknot had just released their newest album on August 9th that year, 8-9. And what's interesting is the very next day on August 11th, a man from Zion, Illinois, just so happened to die at the Slipknot concert. And that sticks out because Kevin Costner used to own a minor league baseball team that was in Zion, Illinois. So it all links back to this Field of Dreams narrative. I know there's a lot to take in, but it's just interesting the Field of Dreams game this year would be held on August 11th, which in England they would write it as 11/8, and this year's going to be the 118th World Series. And further, the same day that we had the Field of Dreams stuff or whatever, I think it was the same day last year, there was a story about one of the basketball players, I think his name's Chauncey something, his shoe blew out, right? And if you go back to the Curtis Blow stuff where I was talking about the number 89 with the Queen, that was right around the time that Zion Williamson's shoe blew out in the basketball game, right? So Zion Williamson's shoe blew out, and the guy whose shoe blew out on this same day here, he was wearing the Zion 1 shoe. He was wearing one of Zion Williamson's shoes. So once again, it all links back, Zion, this big narrative, Kevin Costner, not Bacon. But Kevin Bacon's interesting because we just had this story about Robert Englund saying that Kevin Bacon should be the new Freddy Krueger in a newer movie too. So, and Kevin Bacon's in the movie JFK with Kevin Costner, something I've talked about a lot with Kevin Costner over the years because the character that he plays is Jim Garrison, who's actually from Denison, Iowa, which is just, 19 miles away from where I live. A big thing I've talked about for a long time with Kevin Bacon, or with Kevin Costner, and how he is Jim Garrison in the movie JFK. And then you just think about JFK being the first Catholic president, and then Joe Biden being the second Catholic president, and there's a big link here. But once again, the odds. The score is 8-9. It's 8 months and 9 days before Queen Elizabeth's birthday, the first Field of Dreams game. Oh, I'm even from Iowa, which connects to the Field of Dreams even. It's really interesting. In relation to the number 63, too. So Field of Dreams is 63, but 63 is a really important number to the royal family, too. Prince Philip equals 63. Prince Harry equals 63. Meghan Markle equals 63. Like I said, she died 63 days before my birthday. And think about Prince Harry in relation to, similar to a civil war, a domestic thing, how he leaves the royal family and comes to the United States and so on. And now we got King Charles. His father is going to be King Charles III, most likely. And of course, the King Charleses were the kings during the English Civil War. And remember in 2015, that was the year the Mets were in the World Series. And the Mets play in Queens, and they lost to the Royals. And it was linked up to Matt Harvey, right? Matt Harvey. And I'll get to him in a second, but just in relation to the English Civil War, earlier in 2015, you had the Cleveland Cavaliers win the NBA final, or lose the NBA finals. Cleveland Cavaliers equal 168, like Queen Elizabeth II, right? And no, they also equal 111. It was the 111th World Series. It ended on 11/1. Matt Harvey wouldn't come out of that final game until he threw 111 pitches. And, just before that last hit, they showed Eric Hosmer come to the plate with a 111 batting average. It was all about the number 111. Even New York equals 111, so the Mets were in the 111th World Series. The Mets play in New York. They're synced up to the Queen, and so on. But notice how New York Mets also equals 168, like Queen Elizabeth II. This was in 2015, and then the following year in 2016, we had all the teams that were from the Carolinas in the championships. You had Clemson, who lost in the college football championship. They're from the Carolinas. And you had Carolina Panthers in the Super Bowl. You had North Carolina in the NBA, or the Final Four, or whatever it was, the championship. Then you had the Cleveland Cavaliers make the comeback against the Warriors. And the Cleveland Cavaliers ended up winning the NBA Finals on the real King James's birthday. And the Cavaliers have King James, LeBron James, and a Cavalier is a follower of King Charles during the English Civil War. But just after that, you also had Coastal Carolina win the college World Series. And the Carolinas are named after Prince Charles, or King Charles. So there's this big narrative with the English Civil War and the Kings and so on, right after the Mets had lost in the World Series to the Royals. Just absolutely loaded up. And Cleveland Cavaliers 168, New York Mets 168. You know, it was also linked to the Pope, right? Kansas City equals 122. That's the Royals, and Golden State, who won the NBA Finals that year, equals 122. And Pope Francis equals 122. And, you know, San Francisco, the area where Golden State plays, it's named after St. Francis of Assisi, just like Pope Francis. It's on 122 degrees west. Pretty sure San Francisco equals 122 as well. And that was the year that Pope Francis came to America, you know, and went to the White House and a bunch of stuff on 9/23. Arrived on his 923rd day as the Pope and went to the White House at 9:23 in the morning on 9/23, and a whole lot more. His trip was even linked to that Philadelphia train wreck that was at 9:23 p.m. that they brought back in the news this year on the same day the Batman movie came out. But remember how LeBron James was in the movie called Trainwreck that year? Trainwreck equals 122. And in that movie, Amy Schumer's character is 9 years old in the beginning, and the rest of the movie takes place 23 years later. And LeBron James, who was in the film, his name in Jewish gematria equals 923. Once again, connected to the King's symbolism. But remember how, if you watch that movie, they loved the New York Mets in that movie. So, you know, once again, the Mets were then in the World Series, the 111th World Series that year, and Pope Francis's real name is Jorge Mario Bergoglio, that equals 111. Queen Elizabeth born on the 111th day of the year. 9/11 on the day, leaving 111 days in the year. Remember how New York equals 111. Remember how the New York Yankees upset the big win Seattle Mariners. Can't remember how many games they had, how many they won that year. It was like 100 and a lot of games they won. And the Yankees upset them right after 9/11, 1 month and 11 days after 9/11, 111 to go on to the World Series that year. So, a really big number. And, you know, think about how it was 9/11, and then we had Tom Brady started playing against the New York Jets, right? The Jets and the airplanes that hit the World Trade Centers. And I believe, I can't remember. I think his first game was even on 9/23, or maybe Drew Bledsoe got injured. I'll have to go back and look, but I know it was important to 9/23, and then the New York Jets, and, you know, then they had the Patriot Act, and the Patriots went on to win the Super Bowl right after 9/11 and the Patriot Act. And I'm bringing that up just because Queen Elizabeth, she just recently died on the same day that the football season opened up, and it was with the Buffalo Bills over the Los Angeles Rams, right? And this is interesting because right around the time that Ray Liotta, the guy from Field of Dreams, had died, right? That was when Zach was in Buffalo for the Buffalo rally, or, you know, it was in that same general area. And, of course, Buffalo and gematria equals 63, like Field of Dreams. And Buffalo in these Francis Bacon ciphers just so happens to equal 89, so connected to that. And remember when Zach was at Buffalo, Vice News had showed up, right? Vice News showed up. And this was interesting because after the 2017 World Series, Vice News had made an article about Zach on Joe Biden's birthday even, but they made an article talking about Zach and how he was crazy and the number 52 and so on, and how, you know, the Astros had won. Did they win the World Series that year? The Astros won the World Series 52 days. I'm getting it all mixed up here, but there was Hurricane Harvey, right? And then the first pitcher to pitch in Houston after Hurricane Harvey was Matt Harvey, the pitcher. And that was 52 days before the World Series began. And the word hurricane equals 52. The word flood equals 52. The word Harvey equals 52. And so it was interesting while Zach was in Buffalo that Vice News would show up, right? And this was just after Matt Harvey was suspended, right? So Matt Harvey, I gotta pull all this up. So Vice News shows up at this Buffalo rally on May 22nd, and like I said, Vice News wrote that article about Zach after the Houston Astros that was linked to Matt Harvey pitching in Houston after Hurricane Harvey. And that same day, I looked up the Astros game, and they beat the Texas Rangers 5-2. Even in Texas Rangers equal 52. And the guy who wrote that article about Zach, his name equaled 52. And I thought it was interesting because Matt Harvey had just got suspended and over the Tyler Skaggs stuff. But if you went from Matt Harvey's birthday to the day he was suspended, it was also 52 days. And notice his birthday is the same day as the Will Smith slap, which was on the death date of King James. And he was also born in the year 1989, meaning that his birthday was the same year as the movie Field of Dreams that I'm talking about. And his birthday is even 205 days before the Loma Prieta earthquake that happened, during the World Series. And this year's the 33rd anniversary of that. So, and if you go back and watch that, I'll probably put some pictures in this instead of going to find them all right now. But if you go back and look, Jose Canseco, they showed the number 330 before the power went out because of the earthquake. And then Jose Canseco, the guy wearing number 33, had crossed the plate and then the power went out. So this year's going to be the 33rd anniversary of that Earthquake World Series. And it was 205 days after Matt Harvey's birthday. Think about how Shoeless Joe Jackson equals 205, how Zach thought that Queen Elizabeth would die on 20/5, and how the Reds beat the Cubs 20-5 on the same day that Ray Liotta, the guy from Field of Dreams, had died. And then, of course, he's linked to King James even, too, right? And the number 89. And then, of course, Matt Harvey was the pitcher that was in the 111th World Series for the New York Mets. So it just seems like it's all pointing back to the New York Mets, to me, honestly. And also thinking about it, look where, I've talked about this before, but notice he was born in New London, Connecticut. And I was wondering about the connection to Skull and Bones with this, but it's interesting. New London, we got a new royal running it now, right? New London, New London, Connecticut. It's just interesting. It stands out to me. And then he's really big in the 111th World Series with the Mets who play in Queens, and they lost to the Royals. Further, connected to the Mets even more is, let me find my post here, but on the day that Queen Elizabeth died, she actually died. Did I not put a picture in here? Oh, I didn't put a picture in here. I don't think. Maybe I did. Yeah, I did. Right here. So the Mets didn't play the day that she died, but they played a doubleheader against Pittsburgh on the day before she died. And they got their 86th win and then their 87th win of the season. And that's interesting because if you read out Queen Elizabeth, well, it doesn't matter here, capital letters, but if you read out Queen Elizabeth II, her name equals 87. So it's interesting, the day that she dies, the Mets have 87 wins. They got their 87th and 86th win. But it's even more interesting when you start looking at the pitcher of the 87th win was this guy, Jacob deGrom. And notice his birthday is 6/19, which is interesting because that is the day that King James was born. So he was born on King James's birthday. And I'm talking about how a lot of these connections go back to Matt Harvey, who was born on the death date of King James. So there's definitely something important. Now, LeBron James is probably really important to this narrative, but there's something interesting there, how it relates. And there is more to it. I'll explain it here in a second. But the guy who pitched in the 86th win that day, the day before she died, was this Chris Bassett or however you say his name. And that's interesting because last year, right after the Field of Dreams game, I made a blog post talking about how he was connected to Field of Dreams because he played for the Oakland Athletics, which once again is the team that won the 1989 World Series. But he was the pitcher for them, and he threw an 89-mile-an-hour pitch, and it got hit. A line drive got hit, and it hit him in the face. And that was in the game against the White Sox, the team that's connected to the movie Field of Dreams. And he was also born in the year 89. He was born 8 months and 6 days before the Athletics won the 89 World Series, which was the 86th World Series. And so it's just interesting that he would pitch in the game where the Mets won their 86th game of the season this year, the day before the Queen dies, right? And the 1989 World Series also ended on 10/28, and this year the World Series begins on 10/28. And if you add the end date, that means that he got hit in the face 8 months and 7 days before the A's won the World Series. He was born 8 months and 7 days before the A's won the World Series in 1989, and his name equals 87, just like Queen Elizabeth II. So this odd connection. Hopefully that makes sense, but it's 8 months and 6 days, but if you include the end date, it's a span of 8 months and 7 days before the A's won the World Series that he was born. And he also, in relation to the Oakland Athletics and how it connects here too, to the Field of Dreams and whatever, the Oakland Athletics coach is Tony La Russa, or Russa, however you say his name. But he just so happened to take a leave of absence, right, on August 31st, which is the anniversary of Princess Diana dying, for one. But he was the coach of the Oakland Athletics when they won the 1986 or 1989 World Series. So, when the Athletics won the World Series, he was the coach, and now he's the coach of the team that is connected to Field of Dreams. You remember last year at the Field of Dreams game, he missed the game, I think, because one of his family members had died or something of the sort. So he missed the game. It's just insane, It's that connected to Field of Dreams. Another thing that's really interesting with Tony La Russa being the coach of the 1989 Oakland Athletics and now the current coach of the Chicago White Sox, both teams connected to the movie Field of Dreams, is the fact that on the same day that the Queen died, the White Sox played the Oakland Athletics, and they got their 70th win of the season, and they won 14-2, or you could also say the Oakland Athletics lost 2-14, but the White Sox got their 70th win. And Queen Elizabeth just so happens to be in her 70th year of being the queen, right? And in relation to the score being 2-14, if you go from the anniversary, the 70th anniversary of Queen Elizabeth being the queen, she died 214 days later, a lot like the score of this White Sox Athletics game, both the teams connected to Field of Dreams. And it was also 7 months, 2 days, like I showed before, and Field of Dreams is 72, but this number 214 is another big number that I have been talking about with the royal family for a while now, because Queen Elizabeth, her birthday is actually 21/4, right? April 21st, 21/4. It's an interesting date too, because that's the day that historians believe that Rome was founded. And Rome was founded by Romulus. Think about Romulus and Remus. And there's also Lupercalia that falls on Valentine's Day, 214. Well, I guess, Valentine's is the second day, but Lupercalia actually is the festival that celebrates the she-wolf who suckled Romulus and Remus. So it's interesting that Rome would be founded on that day. And, the Church of England has a whole bunch of connections back to the Catholic Church with King Henry VIII and a whole bunch of stuff, So just an interesting thing to point out that that's also the day that Rome was supposedly founded. But 214, and if you write out Prince Harry, his name equals 72 and also 214. If you write out Prince William, his name equals 72. If you write out Meghan Markle, her name equals 214. And Harry and Meghan just so happened to announce that they were having their second baby on 2/14 of 21, right? February 14th. And that was 214 days before Prince Harry's birthday. And once again, his name's 214. And it was also the day in history that Princess Diana had announced that she was pregnant with Prince Harry. So she announced that on the date 2/14, then he becomes Prince Harry, who equals 2/14. Later in his life, he announces the pregnancy of his second baby on 2/14. Princess Diana died 2 months and 14 days before Prince Charles's birthday. Prince Harry was born 2 months and 14 days after Diana's birthday. So, it's just like a crazy connection to 2/14. And then the Queen being born on 21/4. Remember that Oprah interview with Meghan Markle and Prince Harry too? That interview was when Prince Charles was 72 years old. Princess Diana died 214 days, or 7 months and 2 days after Oprah's birthday. Prince Philip also got the COVID vaccine 214 days after his birthday. So, just some interesting stuff here. The score being 214, then she dies 214 days after her birthday. And once again, think about the connection to Prince Harry and Megxit and kind of causing, similar, not necessarily a civil war, but just, a domestic thing that kind of is similar to a civil war, like the same idea, and that's interesting because Field of Dreams really syncs up to the English Civil War as well. If you write out Field of Dreams, it equals 234, like I showed before. And the Queen just so happened to die 234 days after Kevin Costner's birthday, right? The star of Field of Dreams. So Field of Dreams 234. The Queen dies 234 days after Kevin Costner's birthday. But the English Civil War is really synced to this number. If you write out English Civil War, it equals 234. And, King Charles was the king during the English Civil War that began on the 234th day of the year. And after King Charles I was assassinated, or whatever you call it, after he was executed, Oliver Cromwell took over for a while, and Oliver Cromwell just so happens to equal 234, and he died 234 days after his birthday. And then King Charles II took over, and so on. So, once again, now we got King Charles III. The two Charleses before him were the kings during the English Civil War. And just look how the English Civil War links up to Field of Dreams, and how Queen Elizabeth just so happened to die 234 days after Kevin Costner's birthday. And Kevin Costner's even more interesting because currently he's really famous for the TV show called Yellowstone. And Yellowstone, of course, is a volcano, right? And I'll just leave some pictures in here again, but I have had a ton of videos last year talking about the volcano symbolism and how it was all linked up to the royal family. And then on the same day that Prince Charles died, there was a volcano eruption, and can't remember what island it is, some island, there's a volcano eruption, and, it's just super linked up to this volcano symbolism that's going on. Then you got Kevin Costner in the TV show Yellowstone. Yellowstone's a volcano. And like I said, I'll leave some links in the description. It's way too much to go back and re-explain. It was linked up even to Princess Diana and a whole bunch of stuff. But it was also linked up to the movie Talladega Nights with Will Ferrell. And remember, I had synchronicity, how my son had woke up, and my son was born on the death date of Princess Diana. And in 2019, when I predicted a racer from France would die in a car crash, and then one did, and Princess Diana died in France in a car crash and a bunch of stuff. But I'm bringing that up just because my son had woke up that night, the night before 3/19/21, and I randomly watched some Will Ferrell movie where he sings a song called Volcano Man, and he's from Iceland, and the very next day there was a volcano eruption in Reykjavik, Iceland, because these synchronicities are very, very important. Something I want to get the point across while I'm making these videos, that, there are connections to your own life if you're really paying attention. But I'm bringing all this up because last year, I was talking about Queen Elizabeth being connected to the Atlanta Braves winning the World Series, which was all about the number 95, and the Queen was 95 years old. And Atlanta Braves even equal, or let me pull it up really quick. Here it is right here. Atlanta Braves equal 89 in gematria too, right? So once again, the number 89 linked up to the Queen, but there was all the stuff going on with, I was really watching the date 10/6 with all that volcano symbolism. And it's really interesting too that, as much as I followed the date August 6th, 2022, talking about August 6th a whole lot and how that was really important. And there's been lots of stuff that's still linked to that, which is interesting, just like how August 11th, 2019 was the same way. nothing really that spectacular happened on that day, except for I had this crazy epiphany about the number 424, and it led me to a whole bunch of other stuff, which is awesome. But the date August 6, 2022 is interesting in relation to 10/6/2022 because this is the day leaving 86 days in the year, for one, and Oct, actually, Oct is 8, right? So back on the old Roman calendar, October was the 8th month. So October 6th is a lot like, 8/6/22 as well. So, and it's the day leaving 86 days in the year. And that's a huge day I was watching last year. And nothing really that spectacular happened on that day either. But what did happen on that day was that I was following with volcano symbolism related to the Queen. And there was a story about how Jock Peterson of the Atlanta Braves was wearing a pearl necklace in the game against the New York Mets, the team that play in Queens. And for some reason, CNN gave me that story on October 6th, even though that game happened on October 2nd, which I thought was interesting. But he wore the pearl necklace, and Queen Elizabeth was known for wearing the pearls. And when I looked up Jock Peterson just so happened to have the same birthday as Queen Elizabeth, April 21st, the same day that Field of Dreams came out. So then he wears the pearl, he's wearing the pearls, just like Queen Elizabeth. And later in that article, it went on to talk about Prince, the singer, and how he had a song about pearls and loving pearls. And remember, Prince died on Queen Elizabeth's birthday in 2016, and they colored Niagara Falls purple. And Prince's ex-girlfriend, who had died earlier in the year, named Vanity, she was from Niagara Falls, so they colored it purple in tribute to Queen Elizabeth. But think about Prince and Purple Rain, and then he dies on Queen Elizabeth's birthday. And Prince has the song called I Would Die For, and the letter U, and the letter U is the 21st letter, 4/21. Prince also died 319 days after his birthday, and he has a song called 319. And if you watch my volcano symbolism videos, once again, a lot of it stemmed back to the date 319, which was when we had that Reykjavik, Iceland volcano eruption. So there's something important to this narrative here. And what's even more interesting is that Zach had this prediction that Queen Elizabeth would die on May 20th, and she just so happened to die 3 months and 19 days later, right? 319. So it's very interesting how that links up, and I got to think about that a little bit more. But back to October 6th, last year when I was following the Queen and the Braves and the volcano symbolism, so we had the Jock Peterson story on 10/6, synced up to her. But then they also had this story about a woman who got burnt while saving her dog at Yellowstone. And I was like, volcano, Yellowstone. And there was another story in the news right below it about a mirror that was made of volcanic glass for Queen Elizabeth I. And I thought, man, look at all these stories linked up to volcanoes and whatever, and how they're linked up to Queen Elizabeth on this day. So I don't know. I'm going to pay attention to this day again, too, this year. There's got to be something to that, It's really, and this was another big day important to the train wreck symbolism. And the New York Mets are important to the train wreck symbolism in the movie Trainwreck. And all that symbolism was linked up to when the Mets, who play in Queens in 2015, lost to the Royals in the World Series, the 111th World Series. And once again, look how the day that Zach thought the Queen would die, she ended up dying 111 days later. She's born on the 111th day of the year. There's a whole lot that goes along with this, too, because, after the Buffalo rally, and then she dies on the day that Buffalo opens up the season and wins the game. But after that Buffalo rally, then the next big rally was Zach going to New York on 9/11 and so on, right? So, and New York's 111. 9/11 leaves 111 days in the year. This year at the Field of Dreams game, the Cubs and the Reds, they both played their 111th game of the season at that Field of Dreams game. Derek pointed out a whole bunch of stuff with the coronavirus, and Queen Elizabeth is really interesting too. And there's a whole lot more to this, but he talked about how corona means crown, and she died 911 days after the pandemic was declared in 2020, and she got her vaccine 607 days before her death. Well, the 111th prime number is 607, so she got her vaccine 607 days before she died, which is the 111th prime number, and then dies 911 days after the pandemic was declared. And she also died 9 months and 11 days before the anniversary of King James's birthday, right? And King James equals 89. But it reminds me too of after Prince the singer died on her birthday in 2016, they gave us a story about how Prince died 911 days, or there was four 911 calls made to Prince's Paisley Park for medical emergencies. That's what the news story was. And when I was reading the story, I went from the first time that 911 was ever called at Prince's Paisley Park, where he died or whatever, and it just so happened to be 911 days before he died. So the first 911 call made from there was 911 days before Prince would go on to die. You know, and I even talked about the English Civil War back in that post. Because a lot of that stuff was going on in 2016 with the Carolinas and... Let's see what else I wrote in here. Yeah, remember too, Queen Elizabeth's dogs is another big thing that's been in the news. And back in the end of 2020 it was, before Prince Philip died, and before the volcano symbolism, and it's part of the reason why I knew the volcano symbolism was important, was because Queen Elizabeth's dog named Vulcan had died. And Vulcan, of course, is the god of volcanoes, right? And it made me think of the Vulcan on Star Trek as well, right? Leonard Nimoy. And I pointed out how Leonard Simon Nimoy equals 89, and her dog died 8 months and 9 days after Leonard Nimoy's birthday, and if you write out Vulcan, it equals 89. So there is something important to volcano symbolism with the death of Queen Elizabeth. You know, maybe there's going to be a volcano or something important to volcanoes within the next year or whatever, you know, linked up to the death date of Queen Elizabeth. Just how there was I can't remember. Let me look it up really quick. Prince Philip volcano. I know there's a volcano eruption the same day that he died. That DMX was in the news. St. Vincent, that's what it was. The island of St. Vincent. And of course, Prince Philip died on the 99th day of the year at the age of 99. And if you write out the word queen, it equals 99. And Queen Elizabeth became the longest reigning British monarch of all time on the date 9/9 of 2015. This year I'm talking about with the Queen and the number 89. And that's also the day that the United States of America got its name. And if you write out the United States of America, it equals 99 in gematria. And another interesting thing is the fact that Prince Philip, he was born on 6/10 of 19... Geez, I can't remember the year. Hold on. It's 1921. So if you go from 6/10/1921 to Queen Elizabeth's birthday, 4/21/1926, it just so happens to be 1,776 days later, which, of course, is a number important to the United States of America, right? And she became queen in the year 52, which is a really big number with the Pope and the United States, and the Pope visiting the United States in 2015, and the 239th year of the United States. It's the 52nd prime number. Pope equals 52, President 52, White House 52, Government 52, Gematria 52. You know, in the Francis Bacon ciphers, if you write out God, it equals 52. You know, there's 52 letters in this cipher because you use lowercase and capital letters. Once again, think about the royal family and the 52 cards on a playing deck and the 52-week calendar, and it's a really important number. And, you know, she becomes queen in the year 52. It's also interesting, you know, how, think about the date 5/20, right? Or 20/5. That's another 52 looking in numerology, right? Take out the 0. It's a 52, and that's the day that Zach thought that she would possibly die this year. And there's some interesting parallels with that too, how it's her 70th year, her 70th anniversary of being the queen. And then Zach's mom, she actually died on Zach's mom's 70th birthday, right? So it's pretty interesting. And her name's Donna even. And then think about the Madonna and the Virgin Mary, and that's the day that is important to the Virgin Mary and so on. It's like, it's just, it doesn't mean that's on purpose. It's just, it's an interesting synchronicity though. And if you go from her birthday, Queen Elizabeth's birthday, to the day that she died, it's also 140 days. And that's interesting because May 20th was the 140th day of the year. And and a big reason that he was following this narrative was with the Bengals and so on and the Super Bowl. And if you go from the day of the Super Bowl to the day that Queen Elizabeth died, she died 208 days later. And if you write out Cincinnati Bengals, they equal 208. Of course, the whole Super Bowl was scripted around Zach as well, and the OKC rally and all these other rallies. So it's pretty interesting. It's like how the Buffalo rally ended up beginning on the Buffalo Bills' quarterback's birthday, right? Josh Allen. Same day the Buffalo rally was on the Buffalo Bills quarterback's birthday. Interesting, he's 26 years old too. Like how the word queen equals 26 and 62, and how Queen Elizabeth became the queen in the same year she turned 26. She was 25 at the time, but turned 26. And she was born in the year 26, became queen on 2/6, coronated on 6/2. Just so happened to die 2 months and 6 days before Prince Charles's birthday, right? Another 26. It's interesting, this guy's 26 years old. Well, let's go back up here and look at the stuff. Talked about a lot of that. She was born in a tiger year, died in a tiger year. Keep scrolling here. I wrote, it's all unorganized like crazy here, but we got Freddy Krueger stuff. You also had the Vin Scully die earlier this year, right? And the number 89 is also important to the Los Angeles Dodgers, and Vin Scully important to the Dodgers, but he died 87 days before the World Series begins. And remember, Queen Elizabeth II equals 87. Los Angeles, California equals 89. Los Angeles Dodgers equaled 89. At the time of Vin Scully's death, a lot of people were saying that the World Series began on a different day than it says now. But that was 89 days before the World Series at the time of his death. Everyone was saying that the World Series is going to start on October 30th, I think it was. So it actually says October 28th now. But in regards to the Mets, though, the Vin Scully died 246 days after his birthday, and New York Mets equal 246. And we're currently in the 246th year of the United States. And I don't know if you remember last year, there was an ex-Mets pitcher who died named Pedro Feliciano, and he died on 11/8, right? Making me think of the 118th World Series. And his name equals 246, like New York Mets. So it's just interesting, We also just got the death of this ex-Atlanta Braves pitcher, Anthony Varvaro, and he died on his way to a 9/11 commemoration, and he was he left the MLB to become a cop in New York, and then he got put on the 9/11 World Trade commemoration or something like that, right? And he died on his way to go to a memorial thing. But, even I don't even know, there's some funny things in here. It even talks about how he was married in 2011, right? And remember how 9/11 is all about the number 11. But, get off this picture here. His name equals 246, just like how September 11th equals 246, right? So the Mets also won 9-3 on September 11th. And once again, think about the 93 World Trade Center bombing. And 9-3 is the 246th day of the year. That's also the day they say Osama bin Laden's father died, I'm pretty sure. You know, you could also say that they won, it was 3-9 or 9-3, right? And New York equals 39 and so on. And he was a Brave player that's connected to the Queen. The Mets play in Queens. Last year, Fetty Wap just got rearrested, right? But last year, right around the time of the World Series, Fetty Wap got arrested at Citi Field where the Mets play. Of course, Fetty Wap has a song called Trap Queen, right? So, there's something important to the Queen all leading up to that. This, and simple stuff too. This Varvaros guy, he died 1 month, 20 days before his birthday. Atlanta equals 120. He's an ex-Atlanta Braves pitcher, The Braves lost 8-7, and they stayed on 87 wins, and Queen Elizabeth II equals 87. Could also say the score was 7-8, like how New York equals 78. They even played Seattle, right? The company who constructed the World Trade Centers or whatever, Magnet. I can't think of what it's called right now, but they're from Seattle. Clementic Associates. So, just, I don't know, just interesting with the Vin Scully thing. It's linked up. Then you just think about Los Angeles and earthquakes, though. And the 1989 Earthquake World Series. I'm thinking about this volcano symbolism. There's definitely something important to all that. Earthquake stuff. Then, of course, Queen Elizabeth dies age 96. And on the date 9/6, just before she dies, they announced the new prime minister, and her name's Liz Truss, that equals 72, like Field of Dreams. But she was born, like I said, she was born the same day as Roger Taylor, the drummer from Queen. It was linked up to all the symbolism I talked about from a long time ago. But also think about how she was replaced by, she replaced Boris Johnson. And Boris Johnson has the same birthday, June 19th, which is the death date, or the birthday of King James, right? So, once again, it just goes right back to that same old narrative. And there's a whole bunch of stuff going on with what is going on just within this truth community and all kinds of stuff. All of these rallies are really, really, really linked up to Skull and Bones. It's like ridiculous. I'm going to make a whole nother video on it, but there's an umbrella symbolism that I've been talking about forever with connected to Zach. And just days before the New York rally, I was pointing out this huge connection to the umbrella symbolism, how it linked up to the New York City rally. And then on the day of 9/11, it rains like crazy. And if you watch all the live streams, there's literally like umbrellas everywhere. I've never seen that many umbrellas in my entire life. And, it's just insane that they would even rain and then there's like everyone's holding a fucking umbrella. Like there's just no way. Who else was talking about that, Because I'm paying attention to these patterns that exist around us. It's not just the media coding stories. The whole truth community is being ruled by some type of system, you know what I'm saying? And it's just craziness that there's umbrellas everywhere, but let's see here. You know what, even funnier, I didn't take a picture of it, but the night before Queen Elizabeth died, I went to the casino and I was playing me and my girlfriend were playing the same machine, because I just feel like we win a lot more when we play the same machine instead of me giving her money and then she loses and then I lose and then we just both lose. If we play the same machine, then we lose together or we win together, right? And that night, we just happened to be playing some like rocket and locket machine, so I don't know if that's important, probably, but some firecracker looking machine. But I won. I hit the jackpot for $1,518. And I just think it's interesting because Queen Elizabeth II equals 1518 in the English extended cipher. And this cipher is just, I've talked about it with synchronicity. It's always important. So 1518. Maybe I need to look at the year 1518 and something to do with England. I don't know, but it's just interesting. I wish I'd have took a picture and put like my. They made me delete the picture at the casino. Actually, they said the security caught me take a picture of it, and they came over and made me delete it off my phone. But I still have the tax form that I didn't claim taxes on it, but I think it still has the amount on there, and I'll add it to this blog post eventually if I can find it. But it's just interesting I would win that much money, and then her name equals that, and she dies the very next day. But look at this connection to Liz Truss and the number 322. Elizabeth died a span of 322 days before Liz Truss's birthday. Mary Elizabeth Truss, 322. Liz Truss's birthday is 254 days after Prince Charles's birthday, or now King Charles. Skull and Bones, 254. Think about 9/11, the 254th day of the year. Think about George Bush, the president during 9/11, the Skull and Bones, remember? The Georgia Guidestones coming down. How the Buffalo rally was 3 months and 22 days before 9/11. And the Buffalo rally was also on the founder of Skull and Bones, Alfonso Taft's birthday. I mean, all of the stuff leading up to that, the grocery store shootings and so on, they were all linked up to Zach and the number 322. And then the Buffalo rally was at the Tops grocery store shooting, right? Once again, there's just like a huge narrative with Skull and Bones and how it links up to all this. Then, of course, the day after 9/11, they go to Yale today, right? So, King Charles III also equals 89. I think with probably the S exception. Let me see. No. Yeah, I think with the S exception, King Charles III equals 89. I didn't put it in here, but. Oh, there's a reverse. Hold on. Yeah. King Charles III, 89 with the S exception, so. And the Field of Dreams game this year just so happened to be a span of 96 days before his birthday, and then she dies at the age of 96, so. I feel like I'm forgetting a few things here. I actually started this video a few days ago. It always happens. I get going, and then I gotta stop and go do other things. I literally work like all week, and then I have like DJ and band gigs like every weekend, it seems, right? And over the summer it's crazy. Like seems like I have a couple gigs every weekend anymore. Let's see here. I think I'm just gonna leave it there. But what's even funnier too though, just whatever, I'm rambling at the end of this video, but talk about all these umbrellas and stuff at New York City, right? The New York, just even the black and white one and whatever, it's like, literally, I talked about the Umbrella Man on September 6th even, and, look at his black and white checkered mask and how it was all linked up to this New York City rally, but I went to my mom's later that day, and just to go over to my parents' house or whatever, just to bring my kids over there for a little bit, and I was going to go to the grocery store just like half a block away to get something to eat and stuff. And anyway, I was sitting in my mom's kitchen, and I looked up at the TV, and I noticed Home Alone was on. I was like, you're watching Home Alone? It was like September 11th, we're watching Home Alone, and I'm thinking, that's hilarious, because I've recently been, I have a video, and I've talked about Home Alone a whole lot. And Buzz McAllister being in the news, and a whole bunch of stuff. Just made a recent video on it, and I talked about Home Alone 2 Lost in New York. So it's like, it's really funny that my mom be watching Home Alone, but what's even funnier is that my mom turned on the guide and said, right before she turned it on, she's like, you know what, I bet you Home Alone 2 is on right after this one, because that's how they do it. They run marathons. And when she turned on the guide, it was 112 on 9/11, both the emergency dialing codes, 112 and 911. And sure enough, Home Alone 2 was the next movie on. But notice it's on channel 166, like how Twin Towers equal 166. How all of the umbrella symbolism stem back to the Umbrella Man making that video about the number 166, 166 days after my birthday. and how my uncle died in connection to the number 166 right after Zach's house got crashed into, or his garage got crashed into. And what's funny about that Umbrella Man thing is that he made that video 322 days before my birthday. And when I was trying to record that video to put it on my blog, it stopped at 3 minutes and 22 seconds and started buffering. And I even wrote that on my blog, how it stopped at 3:22 and then it buffered for like a minute and then it started playing again. And it was 322 days before my birthday, you know. And then the next video he made was about Zach and a dead squirrel. And then Zach found that dead squirrel on his car a couple days later, or the next day, whatever it was. But that's interesting because for years I have had this inside joke with lots of people how I am the squirrel master, because I had a paper route when I was a little kid and I shot a squirrel with a BB gun, and I swear this squirrel like remembered me and hated me. And I always told this like funny story to all these kids and whatever. And recently I've been seeing this one kid named Dawson who always calls me the squirrel man. And, you know, it's just kind of funny, you know. I know that the Umbrella Man videos involved my life as well. And then when he made that next one, 166 days after my birthday, about the number 166, right after I had made this video about the number 166, you know. And it's linked up to Skull and Bones, and I talk about the umbrella symbolism, then there's umbrellas everywhere in New York. You know? It's just unbelievable. But like I said, I'm going to make a whole other video on how the umbrella symbolism is synced up. Hopefully I'll make it tonight. I don't think I'm going to, though. Maybe I have a pounding headache right now. But I'll probably make it tomorrow or sometime this week, maybe Friday. But it's just crazy. And what's even weirder is, like, I've been talking about the number 424 like no other, and capital letters, and I talked about how the Capitol insurrection was linked up to Zach because they had that Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone right after the Umbrella Man guy was busting out windows at the George Floyd thing in Minneapolis, right? And then they had the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone where it had the umbrella logo, and then there was the Capitol Hill insurrection. And then Zach got bear spray just a few days later, linked up to the guy who died from bear spray at the Capitol insurrection. It was all with this number 186 and the Umbrella Man. And, you know, the Capitol insurrection is important to capital letters. You know, teaching us to pay attention to capital letters, right? And, I mean, I went back and I was looking at the post for the Umbrella Man, and notice he had 424 subscribers when he made that video about the number 166. That was 166 days after my birthday. And then the next night, some lady named Mary Toffelmeyer called in to the Gematria Effect. Said that she was his next victim. And he was trying to hurt her pet pig while I was sitting next to a stuffed animal pig that my daughter told me to watch while she went to bed because it was her pet. Of course, Mary Toffelmeyer equaled 166 as well. And I was talking about this stuff with the angel Gabriel and how, you know, he talks to Zachariah, Daniel, and Mary in the Bible. And of course, you got Zach Hubbard, who's Zachariah, and I'm Daniel. And I said, I wonder if there's somebody named Mary that's important. And then the next night, some lady named Mary calls in and says that she's the next victim of this guy. And her name is 166. You know, it's just like some crazy stuff, so. But whatever, like I said, I'll make a whole separate video on that. This one should be about Queen Elizabeth, so. Have a good one, peace.